Oh hey guys, it's Noah, and I've been playing the Switch 2 ever since it launched in June of this year. And there's a lot to say about it. It definitely improved on a lot of the problems that the Switch 1 had, but at the same time, the launch of the Switch 2 just hasn't felt as perfect as the launch of the Switch 1 was. Ever since it was fully revealed in April of this year, people have been criticizing it like parents who say they aren't upset, they're just disappointed, but are actually f***ing furious. I just wanted to look at some of the problems with the Switch 2 in the initial launch months. How could it have possibly gone wrong? By far the most controversial aspect of the Switch 2 launch has been the prices. Before the Switch 2 launched, there was a lot of speculation about how much the system itself would cost. Some people said it would cost $400, other people said it would cost $500, and ultimately, Nintendo decided to price it at $450, so that neither camp was correct. The price is a little high, but at the same time, it's about the same price as some of the other modern consoles, so it's not a huge deal. And I think a lot of other people share that same sentiment, but what people didn't consider was the price of literally everything else. Most Switch 2 games cost $70, but some Switch 2 games, like Mario Kart World, cost $80. Considering the price of games increased to $70 not that long ago, it's kinda crazy to already be getting an $80 price increase. What's more is that some of the Switch 2 accessories are pretty pricey too. A Pro Controller is $90, Joy-Con 2s are $100, and Amiibos are now $30 to $40 each. And it doesn't help that Nintendo increased the prices due to market conditions here in the United States. Nintendo also announced that some Switch 1 games would be getting upgrades. Some of these upgrades cost an additional $10 or $20. And one thing that I think is important to note here is that the games that are getting paid upgrades haven't ever gotten any price drops since they came out, so they're effectively just increasing the prices of old games. Breath of the Wild still costs $60 just like it did in 2017, but now you can buy it with its Switch 2 upgrade for $70. So what's included in Breath of the Wild's upgrade? Well, it increases the resolution and frame rate. It also lets you use the Zelda app on mobile devices. If Ganondorf calls you at 3 AM, don't pick up. These upgrades aren't bad per se, I just don't think they're really worth what they're charging for them. A better frame rate shouldn't be locked to a paid upgrade when it's kind of just an inherent feature of the console you just bought. And sorry, but I'm not paying $10 for Zelda Google Maps, as cool as that sounds. At least some of the Switch 1 upgrades are free updates, but I feel like all of them should have been free, since you already went out of your way to pay for the console. As a huge insult to injury, a few weeks after the Switch 2 launched, Nintendo went back and increased the price of all Switch 1 models. A Switch OLED is now $400. That's almost as much as the Switch 2 itself. I don't think I've ever seen a company increase the price of last-gen hardware nearly a decade after it came out. All these price increases really start to add up, especially when buying the console itself is an investment. Tell your kids they can have dinner next week. You got more important things to do, like play Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour is a piece of software Nintendo created to showcase the features of the Switch 2 and share some interesting tidbits about the system. Now, what does that have to do with prices? Well, turns out the Welcome Tour isn't available for all Switch 2 owners, and instead is a $10 paid download. A lot of people have been taking turns ripping this game to shreds, and I just wanted to say that I want a turn too. This isn't a game, this is a quiz. Why would I ever pay money for this? You can't even do everything in the game if you don't have the right accessories for the Switch 2. I don't have a 4K TV yet, Nintendo. I spent all my money on a Switch 2 and Mario Kart World. If it's supposed to welcome you to the console you just bought, then why don't all Switch 2s have it? Okay, I think I got it all out. All this is to say that I just think it's a huge insult to charge money for something that clearly should have been a pack-in game. Despite how I sounded 5 seconds ago, I don't have anything personal against this game. There's actually a lot of cool tidbits and information in it. I just think Switch 2 Welcome Tour really highlights how ridiculous Nintendo's pricing strategy has been with the Switch 2. Other than Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, what was Nintendo launching the Switch 2 with? Well, Nintendo's main offering on the Switch 2 at launch was Mario Kart World, a brand new Mario Kart game that takes place in a big open world that players are free to explore. The game sort of takes a page or two out of Forza Horizon's book, which is actually a pretty cool concept for Mario Kart, and yeah, the game is pretty decent, but there's a lot of glaring issues with it too. To emphasize the open world of the game, Nintendo added these stretches of track called routes, and one of the issues that stems from this is that the routes just aren't very interesting design-wise. A lot of them are basically just straight lines, which is pretty boring. Another issue with Grand Prix is that, traditionally in a Grand Prix race, you race 3 laps around the track. Pretty standard fare, right? Well, in Mario Kart World's Grand Prix, you end up spending most of the race driving on the routes, and then once you arrive at the track that you're supposed to be racing at, you only go 1 lap around the track. That is, except for the first track in a Grand Prix, which you actually do go 3 laps around. It's just such a weird decision to make one of the tracks a normal 3-lap Mario Kart race, and then have the rest of them mostly be routes and then 1 lap around the track. It feels like I don't really get an opportunity to learn the track or find any cool shortcuts. Basically, a lot of the fun track design in Mario Kart is sacrificed so you can drive on routes. And the routes aren't necessarily bad, but they take away from the time that you could be spending on the track, which I think is a lot more interesting than driving on the routes. Now, other than racing, you can also drive around the open world in free roam mode. Free roam's a great concept, but it turned out to be kinda lame. Other than driving around, you can find P-switches that start little bite-sized missions for you to do. You can also find question mark panels and peach medallions hidden throughout the open world. Now, what do you get for completing a P-switch mission? A sticker. What do you get for finding a question mark panel? A sticker. And what do you get for finding a peach medallion? A sticker! Yeah, so the only objective of free roam mode is to find a bunch of items that just give you stickers that don't do anything. That's really it for free roam mode. The lack of any major objectives really devalues this mode for me. It's nice to drive around and chill, but there isn't a lot of gratification to that. If there was a greater reward for exploring, then I think free roam mode would be fantastic, but as is, it's just alright. There are also a lot of little issues with the game, like how some characters can only be unlocked with the Kamek item, how there's no dedicated battle mode tracks, or how you can't play with friends online. All these little issues wouldn't be that big of a deal if the game didn't cost $80. If Nintendo's gonna ask that much more for this game, then I'd hope it would be that much better than anything they have available right now. And honestly, Mario Kart World just doesn't fit that bill. The world of the game has a lot of polish, but a lot of the other things in the core gameplay just don't feel very well thought out. Mario Kart World is still a solid game, but it just doesn't feel like the slam dunk of a launch title that Nintendo wanted it to be. During the early years of the Switch 1, people complained about Nintendo's solution for voice chat for their online games. Seriously, look at that shit. Nintendo decided to create GameChat on Switch 2 to make online voice chat easier. So what is GameChat? Well, it's basically Discord. Nintendo put the C button on all Switch 2 controllers so that you can open GameChat, even though you can just open it from the home menu. What's more is that in a couple months, GameChat will be locked behind a Nintendo Switch Online subscription. What I'm getting at here is that the C button on the Switch 2 controllers is the first button on a game controller ever to be locked behind a paid subscription. Wow. Honestly, I think Nintendo just added this button to make it seem like they actually added something to the original Switch controllers. Oh yeah, and on the topic of accessories, to go along with GameChat, Nintendo released a camera accessory so that you can see your friends while you play. For how much Nintendo was pushing it alongside the system, it really feels like it should have been built into the console. I mean, remember, the main gimmick of a Switch is that it's a portable system. Do you really want to lug around a wired camera around with you whenever you're traveling? They were able to build a microphone into the system, so I don't see why they couldn't have put a little camera in there too. Some games have special uses for the camera in gameplay. The main games to do that are Super Mario Party Jamboree Nintendo Switch 2 Edition, and everybody's favorite, Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. There's a few other games that use it, but those are the two heavy hitters. You know, the craziest part of all of this is that in the couple months that the Switch 2's been out, I haven't used GameChat a single time. Yeah. It feels like GameChat was meant to be a big selling point of the Switch 2, but it really just feels like an excuse for you to buy more stuff, like a Nintendo Switch Online subscription or that stupid camera. I could easily negate all of that by just using Discord, and honestly, I think I will. During the Switch 1 generation, several games were released physically that didn't actually have the game on the cartridge. Instead, they'd either come with a download code for a game, or they'd come with an incomplete cartridge and you'd download the rest of the game. Or both, like this Borderlands collection. When the Switch 2 was fully revealed, Nintendo announced that some games would be distributed physically as game keycards. Basically, game keycards are just physical games that don't have any game data on the cartridge. Instead, you insert the cartridge into your Switch 2, and it gives you permission to download the game over the internet to your Switch 2 and play it. So my good friend, I hear you ask, what is the difference between a digital game and a game keycard? Well, the best way I can put it is that a digital game is just a digital file on your Switch 2, while a game keycard is a digital file that's dependent on an empty cartridge for you to be able to play it. So my dear friend, I hear you ask, why would I buy a game keycard over just downloading the game digitally? And the answer to that is, I don't know. One of the benefits of game keycards is that you can physically exchange them, like if you wanted to go to GameStop and trade in your game for a cheeseburger. Initially, I wasn't very bothered by the idea of game keycards, until it became apparent that nearly every single third-party game on the Switch 2 would be a game keycard. That's pretty rough for people who like owning their games physically. Do you think I was very happy about this? Since the Switch 2 came out, I've only bought 2 games for it, and neither of them are game keycards. One of them is Mario Kart World, of course, and the other one is Cyberpunk 2077. Huge shout out to CD Projekt Red for actually putting the game on the cartridge and not making it a game keycard. Now, if you got confused at all during this game keycard spiel, I can't really blame you. I actually know what all this stuff means, and I'm still kinda confused. It's just way too complicated. I know Switch game cartridges are expensive to produce, but game keycards just feel like such a half-baked solution to that. What's even more mind-boggling about this is that Nintendo decided to give third-party developers only 2 options for releasing their game physically. They could either use a huge and expensive 64GB cartridge, or they'd have to settle for a game keycard. There's absolutely no in-between. And clearly a lot of developers decided to just go for game keycards. And I can't blame them. But there's plenty of games that came out for the Switch 2 that could easily fit on something smaller than a 64GB cartridge. But Nintendo's basically forced developers into either buying really expensive cartridges that they don't need, or putting their game on a game keycard. Of all the problems I've discussed in this video, I think game keycards are the one that frustrate me the most. I could rant about these things for even longer, but I should probably just move on. Despite the Switch 2 having a pretty rough launch, the thing sold really well. It sold about 3.5 million units in just a couple days after launch. So from Nintendo's perspective, this launch was actually f***ing fantastic. But I do wonder how a lot of these issues will affect the Switch 2 sales in the future. Of course loyal Nintendo fans will pay for the Switch 2 at launch and pay $80 for Mario Kart and pay for a Switch Online subscription. And frankly, those people are stupid. Those people are also me. And I use the word rough very carefully here, because I don't think the Switch 2 launch was bad per se. I mean, would you rather get a Switch 2 or a 3DO? There were just a lot of problems at launch that made it feel kinda rough, you know? But as they say, it doesn't pay to get a Switch 2 at launch. I don't know who exactly said that. Probably Socrates. But I think the Switch 2 will definitely improve as the generation goes on. I just hope Nintendo listens, cause they've got a lot of their biggest fans complaining, like me and Scott the Woz. So let me know, what are your biggest problems with the Switch 2? Or vice versa. What do you think is really cool about the Switch 2, or how did it improve on the Switch 1? And if you don't mind, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. Thank you so much for watching. Peace!